A recent survey said that most people watch one, maybe two movies every week. That's between 50 and 100 movies a year. And with on-demand services, some of us are binge watching hundreds, maybe even thousands of feature-length programs, not to mention all the documentaries, multi-season shows, and short films that we invest years of our lives consuming. But what is that investment of time and money doing to us as human beings? What impact is it having on our souls? Are the movies we're consuming making us kinder, more loving, more patient, and more aware of the needs of others? Or are we just entertaining ourselves? I thought it'd be a good time to ask some of these important questions, so you're going to meet somebody special. Tonight's conversation is with someone, a filmmaker, who believes in the power of movies to enrich our lives and cause us to think and act for good. When someone announces retirement, the big question always follows, what are you going to do next? Our next guest retired from teaching and returned to his first love, acting, and then this time as a director. Instead of complaining about the decline in good family-oriented content, Bradley Hawkins is doing his part to give his grandchildren something worth watching. His new project, a short film called Calf Rope, has won a slew of awards after making the rounds at film festivals. If you're a subscriber to the faith and family-friendly streaming service PureFlix, Bradley's movie is now available. Let's take a look at the trailer. Here's Calf Rope.
I'm gonna get 220, I'm gonna get 30, now 30, I'm gonna get 230, I'm gonna get 240, I'm gonna get 240, 250, I'm gonna get 250, I'm gonna get 260, I'm gonna get 260, I'm gonna get 260, I'm gonna get 270, 270, 270, I'm gonna get 280, I'm gonna get 280, 280, I'm gonna get 92, 92, I'm gonna get 90, I'm gonna get 3, I'm gonna get 3, I'm gonna get 310, I'm gonna get 310, I'm gonna get 310, 10, 210 again, 310, 20, I'm gonna get 20, I'm gonna get 20, I'm gonna get 310, I'm gonna get 230, I'm gonna get 330, I'm gonna get 340, 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 I'm gonna get 340 Sold $330. Red Run Farms.
Granddad, were you ever a real cowboy?
Well, Bradley, I think many of our viewers who grew up watching Roy Rogers or Bonanza would be immediately drawn into your movie. Who were your cowboy heroes growing up?
Actually, my granddad would be my cowboy hero. With my dad, we would watch Bonanza and Gunsmoke and Maverick and Wagon Train and all those back in the 60s. But it was really, whether or not my grandfather was a cowboy was the question in my head as a little boy, because you watch the actors and the shows on TV and they look a certain way. They're, they're buff and they're, kind of rugged looking. But my grandfather wore a Stetson and cowboy boots, but he got a bit of a punch, and it's like, is he a cowboy or not? And I learned that being a cowboy is really more a spirit of the heart than what your exterior looks like as far as a modern cowboy. So yeah, it'd be my granddad Mac that was my favorite cowboy.
That is really cool. I mean, the film looks really cool. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I could relate to in there. I was a paper boy. I was a Cub Scout, as a kid. I mean, those are all images that resonate with me. Movie looks really great. So now, obviously, if your grandpa's wearing a Stetson, you didn't grow up in Philadelphia. Where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Cupertino, California, but my grandparents, on both sides of my family, lived on this little fly speck of a town on the border of Texas and Oklahoma that's called Texhoma.
Wow.
I mean, it's such a small town. There's one stoplight, but 12 churches right on the border of Texas and Oklahoma. And one side of my family lived on the Texas side and the other on the Oklahoma side. So my parents bring me and my brothers out to Texhoma, usually at least once a year at Christmas, or sometimes Christmas and during the summer vacation. And that's when I got to see my granddad Mac and my other grandparents. All four grandparents lived in that same little town.
Wow, wow. And I guess you probably got to see rodeos, and you got to see cows and calves.
I saw a lot of cows and calves. I actually did not see my first rodeo till making calf rope.
Really?
And it was interesting to me, being from California and knowing that I wanted to tell a story. I wondered, are there any rodeos in Pennsylvania? So I started Googling, and it's like all over the place here. So I was very late in life at going to a rodeo. I was like 55 when I saw my first rodeo.
Wow.
But it kind of confirmed where I first saw cattle and such were at a cattle auction. And there's a cattle auction portrayed in the film that is very true to life as to what that felt like as a little boy going there.
Yeah. What do you want people to see when they see the film Calf Rope? What do you hope it inspires in them?
So what inspired me to choose this as my third film was becoming a grandparent and wanting to leave something for them to see a family legacy, in a sense. And so Calf Rope is basically based on my memories of a conglomerate of my grandparents, but I focused on my granddad Mac. What I'm hoping people will think about are how young lives really look to us older parents, adults, grandparents, teachers, pastors, and they're watching, and they remember. And I wanted to tell a story that made people consider how are they presenting themselves to young people and what might actually stick. Because my grandfather, if he was alive today, he'd be amazed that what stuck for me were small things that he wouldn't have thought anything about, but now have passed on to my own grandkids. The best example is the film being called Calf Rope. Are you familiar with the term even?
I can figure out what it is from the term, but tell our viewers.
Okay, so calf rope is actually a phrase used that means I surrender. And my granddad Mac, used to tickle me relentlessly until I would say the magic words, calf rope, and then he would stop.
Wow.
And in the film Calf Rope, those two words take on deeper meaning as the film progresses. But I will say this, that my two granddaughters today know that if Grandpa Hawkins is tickling, you better say calf rope. And you know what? I totally can see in their eyes and such that they're never going to forget that. And when they become parents, they may be saying calf rope to their children.
Yeah, that is so sweet. It's funny the things that people remember.
Yeah.
Especially as they get older, what really sticks with them, and the time you spent with your grandfather and the fun you had, and the saying. I mean, who would have thought? I bet he never would have thought, like you said, that years even after his passing, this would still be in you.
Oh my goodness, yes. There's one prop in the film. That's the only thing that I received when my grandfather passed, and that's a ceramic cowpoke. And that ceramic cowpoke, I now have it. It's on my my fireplace mantle. It actually makes it into the film, so yeah, something just small like that just kind of goes on with the family. The story's really about love and legacy, and about what we can pass on to generations beyond us that will maybe make them choose to be better. Choose to give our best, especially with young people coming behind us.
Well, they're watching, and it's not just what
they
you
are
say;
watching.
it's what you do that they remember.
Absolutely,
So
and much more than what you say.
Yeah.
Like even the wrestling around, in the clip there where the grandfather's playing with the two boys and they're wrestling around. He was definitely the hands-on grandparent, and you remember that. Without too much of a spoiler, it ends with some 8mm footage of my actual relationship with my granddad Mac. And at about age 12, a very last clip you see is of him giving me just this hug. And I swear I can still feel that tactile hug of what that felt like, and the smell of his cologne and his Dapper Dan and his hair and all that. It all comes back when I see that little clip at the very end.
Yeah, well, you have such a marvelous gift. I mean, and look at how God is using you. I mean, there are so many people in our society that say, well, when you get to be 55 or 60, that's kind of it. You're on the downward slope, and it's time for the rocking chair, retirement. Just figuring out what one vacation to the next. And here it is. God is using you mightily. I mean, you start out as a band leader, right?
Yes.
And then you go from being a band leader to being a teacher. You get your degree as an older guy.
Yep.
And then you become a teacher, and you're a teacher in Lebanon, here in Pennsylvania for
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
And then instead of retiring and looking for the rocking chair, here it is. God uses your love of film and your talent as an actor and director to begin producing films. And so here it is. This is your third film. This is your third film, right?
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, this is your third film, and it's getting awards, and it's going to be a blessing to so many people that watch it. And you've got more slated. But it's just a real testimony as to how God can use people, even after they've retired from their first career.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah, I really feel like, in many ways, it feels like the journey that God's put me on throughout my entire life. When I first got my camera, and then being a marching band director, and then
How old were you when you got your first camera?
I probably was 9 or 10.
And you start taking pictures with it, and
movie camera. Yeah, it had a stop action button on it where you click up and you'd be able to shoot stop animation movies.
Yeah.
So I had my little race cars. I moved like a little fraction of an inch a bit, and car crashes and things like that. But then I used my younger brothers as my talent and the neighborhood kids. And this is back when the film was silent 8mm movies.
Yeah.
But great experience, and all of that fed throughout my life that way. But yeah, just how the journey of the similarities of being a marching band director, as a film director, are enormous. The relationships are very much the same. You have a large crew of cast to help create a story on the field.
People are sitting in the stands.
Yes.
The marching band comes out, and they march in all different kinds of formations to tell a story.
Absolutely, yes. And then as a teacher, I always tell teachers that, we're all actors. Every teacher is an actor. They have a script, their lesson plan. They have a costume that they have to wear, which, there's Mr. Hawkins and there's Brad. So Mr. Hawkins had to look a certain way. I have a captive audience of 30 students that can't leave until the bell rings, know. But we all act, even an infant, a toddler acts up to get what they want.
Yeah.
You act one way as your coach, and then not a coach, but as a host of a show, and I'm completely different around your family. It's.
I'm obedient at home. I do what my wife says. I'm very obedient.
Good choice. Yeah. So I just to say that. We don't know where God's going to lead us, but everything that we've done, I believe, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in design. And I believe that everything that I've gone through my life has had the purpose of getting to me where I am now, where I am at 65, telling cinematic stories that are family friendly. And now I'm being much bolder about my faith, because there was a lot of challenges with making calf rope that I didn't have with my two first films that were very whimsical, very family oriented. But this is a deeper story and much more complex. When you watch Calf Rope, the 29-minute short, it really is a proof of concept for my dream for it to be a feature. And the fact that this short has won so many awards and is attracting attention at Christian film festivals and family-friendly film festivals. We have a feature-length screenplay written for it that we plan to, that we're pitching along with the short as, here's what I could do. And because there's so much more to the story that we weren't able to fit into 29 minutes.
So tell us all, like, so how you have a director's heart and mind, and you are able to put some magic together that the rest of us actually love when we watch, and it keeps us captured, glued to the screen. And you're a Christian person. So tell us about that. I mean, there are people that are nominally Christian, of course, like they say, well, if you ask me my denomination or my faith, I'd say I'm Protestant, I'm Catholic, whatever. But for you, following Christ is a little bit different. Did you grow up in a Christian family?
No, I actually did not. My parents would take us to church, but they had... I was baptized at 14 with resistance.
Yeah.
It was nothing I wanted to do.
Yeah, I know that story.
But I do remember times where there was debates about which of my two parents would take us to Sunday, this Sunday, so the other could sleep in, right. That kind of a thing. Right. So I was pretty resistant to it in my childhood. I mean, especially adolescence. But once I got into high school, I would credit three sources as to leading me to Christ. First and foremost had been a friend of mine, Mike Conlon, in high school, who was very much a believer, but was not. He didn't try to shove it down my throat.
Right.
So
you're his buddy.
Yeah.
So he knew that wouldn't work. I mean, he's not going to sit you down and say, Brad, Jesus died for you, pal. Right? No, he didn't do that.
No, I wouldn't have worked with a kid who was resistant to going to church for sure.
So what did he do?
Sorry?
How did he get to you?
His heart was just. Something was different about him, and you could just tell internally. His tone, through his eyes, his demeanor, his gentleness, I think, was part of it. But he's a big football player, So that just all spoke in his just camaraderie with me. Very much like Jesus, kind of hanging out with those that aren't, others would say, "Why are you hanging out with somebody like that?"
Right.
And then the other two sources, though, I'd have to credit were Hal Lindsey's book at the time, The Late Great Planet Earth. That's the one that got me dropped to my knees finally at age 21. But the one that I think most people might be surprised about was a film that many churches at the time in the 70s thought to be very blasphemous. And that was Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical, the film adaptation of the Broadway musical. Here's a guy who at 16 knew virtually nothing about Jesus other than we celebrate him at Christmas and Easter, but that was about all I knew, even though I was going to Sunday school. I'd never heard of Pontius Pilate or the 39 Stripes or, it really, rather than, and I know that there are people who still see that today and go, that's not who Jesus was. But the thing is, that film raised the curiosity in me as to, well, I want to find out more about who Jesus really was. And then as I dived in, I saw there is a whole lot more parallels here than contradictions. And so that film really impacted me. And being a movie guy and a musician and the rock music and the singing and the cinematography is terrific in that movie, it all really spoke to me.
So isn't that amazing how God can use people and even movies that may not try to be evangelical in their outreach, and yet still you get to see who Christ is and you're drawn to him.
Yep.
What a wonderful and marvelous thing. When we return, I want to ask Bradley about the challenges of being a follower of Jesus, a Christian, in an entertainment space that's not so welcoming to people of faith. Stay with us.
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
I'm with filmmaker Bradley Hawkins, whose wonderful family-friendly movie, Calf Rope, has just wrapped up a successful run at international film festivals and is now available on the on-demand streaming service PureFlix. So here it is, you're this Christian guy, you come to Christ, and is it, I mean, does your life change right away, or does your Christ following just kind of lead you to to being a band leader and then to being a school teacher? I mean, tell us how it unfolds for you.
I'm still a work in progress at 65. I turned 66 in a week or so. The most of my spiritual growth through my 6 years has definitely happened in the last 10 years. And I've never been closer to God than while working on CAFRO because of the challenges that came our way that way.
What was the biggest challenge you had?
Funding. It's very tough to make a short film because there's no way for it to be really significantly monetized. So people tend to be resistant to. There's no way to really invest in a short film. Short films are made from people who have followings and that people want to just help out and contributions. So with my first film, I was blessed in the situation where when people knew that I was making movies, I had former students from back in the 80s who are now in their 50s, and former students from my teaching at Lebanon who are in their 20s and 30s now. But they all, when they heard that Mr. Hawkins wanted to make movies, they were all in and trying to help me find the funds. So that's how I was able to fund my first movie. Second movie came similarly. Third one, same path, but it was a lot tougher to find the funding for it. So I had to be patient. I had to go with God's time, not my timing. I had planned to shoot it in 2018, but we didn't have enough funds to shoot the whole film. But I just felt this drive. So we got 2 scenes from the film done in 2018 that are bookends. The film is a period piece set in the 1960s, but there are 2 segments that are not set in the 60s. One is a flashback in 1916, a rodeo scene, and then the end is an epilogue which takes place when the grandson is now a grandfather himself in 2019 to show how the whole journey goes. Those we shot in 2018. We made a teaser trailer out of that we showed in 2019 that got us the rest of the funds to be able to shoot the rest of the movie in 2019. Wow. So, yeah, funding is tough for that kind of thing, but God's timing made it just right. Matter of fact, I always say, if we had shot in 2018, I would not have gotten the little boy who's in the film in 2019 because he would have been too young a year before. Yeah. And this little boy is just phenomenal in it. He won 27 awards for his very first film for his acting in it. It's just, so, yeah, it's just it's a journey of development as a Christian, striving to be more Christ-like throughout my entire life. But it's really been exponentially accelerated these last 10 years, where my previous movies are family-friendly for sure. CAFRO is family-friendly also, but it hints at my spirituality, my faith through the wholesomeness of the family members in it. I mean, it won awards for Best Short at Christian film festivals, but all you'll see in the film is grace being said. Yeah. But it's said with heart, and people can see that. Yeah. But so from here on out, I'm looking to be bolder with my faith moving forward and creating content that I would call faith adjacent. Yeah. It's where you can tell that these are good people. They will mention God in their life and such, but they're not trying to be evangelical. I think there's a lot of I like the idea of planting seeds and then getting out of the way and let God doing what He will with it. Like what happened with me with seeing Jesus Christ Superstar as a 16-year-old back in the 70s. Right,
that was a seed planted, and then look at what that seed produced.
Yeah.
And what would you say to a young Bradley Hawkins wannabe who's thinking about getting into this business?
Especially to young Christians, I'd say don't let people tell you that you're going to run into resistance. And there's a lot of darkness out there. But with my first film, shooting in LA, we were able to get a crew from Messiah College in Pennsylvania, all Christians, who happened to be in LA when we were shooting, said we have 5 extra days. Would you like help with your movie? So I've ran into Christians and throughout my entire career here because I believe God is working on putting us together, the networking, and He's the ultimate executive producer, man. He's putting this all together, and I can really see that in my life.
Amen, amen. Well, our thanks to Bradley for making this movie and for everything you're doing to bring light and life to what often can be a dark space, the world of entertainment on the big and small screen. I'll be back with our producer, Jeff Coleman, in 1 minute with closing thoughts.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
And now let's talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, I hope this was an encouraging conversation. I think so many people are exhausted by entertainment.
You like movies?
I love movies. Yeah. But there are oftentimes you get through a movie and you go, all right, I had to fast forward through a lot. I mean, thankfully Netflix gives you that option. But this is this emerging genre of people who are Christian in the entertainment industry, and not necessarily making overt evangelistic movies, but making good stories that don't exclude the Christian message or the message of the gospel. I think that's a good trend.
Yeah, you know, I think it's wonderful. I mean, I like what he was saying about, you know, it's not, it doesn't have the outward appearance of being openly evangelical, which would probably turn some viewers off. Yeah. You know, people who aren't Christians might be turned off by that if they thought this was just an evangelical film.
It was just a sales play.
Right. But for it to be what it is, and then for people to see it and to see Christ in it. You know, kind of like even how Bradley as a young guy saw Christ in Jesus Christ Superstar, you know, which a lot of Christian folks would say, yeah, it's on the fringes there. Right. You know, it's not really a saved, born-again, evangelical kind of movie. But yet and still, he saw Christ, and it inspired him to study more and to find out, who is this Jesus? Right. And then he ended up following him. So, I mean, God is able to use, you know, all things for his purpose and glory. But I love the fact that calf rope is so subtle, and it's able to draw everybody in. But not hidden. Yeah. I think the other encouraging piece, and one of the reasons we wanted to have Bradley on, is because we always are trying to find examples of people who are defying the notion of what it means to be retired. You're not accepting an arbitrary age or number, but really, if you're a Christian and you read the Bible, I mean, you do find some references to the priests being retired from a certain kind of service, but for the person who's following Christ, that calling is something that extends until your last breath, as Bradley talks about. And so saying, look, you're going to push and persevere to the end, allow God to order your circumstances in any way that he wants, and then trust him to provide resources along the way. And then what do I do with the movie? Or what do I do with this book or this idea? You just do it. And then you trust God to provide whatever amplification, whatever eyeballs he wants or ears to that medium. It's exciting. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I'm glad you took a half hour of your time tonight to listen to this conversation. Before you jump to the next program, movie, and back to your social media feed, take a minute to reflect on how you're spending the minutes and hours that God gives each of us. Maybe it's time to call or text a friend who's lonely and missing you right now. Maybe it's a good day to reconcile with a friend or family member you haven't spoken with in years. Or maybe it's time for a little quiet after a day of noise. Take the time to do that too tonight. And in a spare moment, send me a quick note in the comment box at joewatkins.org to let me know that this program encourages you to love God and love your neighbor and follow him a little more closely. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you next week.
That was a good conversation.
I loved it. I love the fact that, you know, God's not done with me yet. I mean, you know, he's full steam ahead, 65 and going full steam, and God is using him and blessing him, and he's blessing others.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.